Hi, it's Keith at Scheider Farms, and we're so excited because in the past few years, there's been so many new young people out there who are gaining an interest in gardening. And I know that a lot of you have a lot of questions, and what we're wanting to do this week in a short series of short videos is help you just learn the basics of gardening and some of the terms and what to expect out of gardening. So um, today, the first thing we want to talk about is perennials, annuals, and shrubs, and what exactly the differences are between them, and what you can expect, what you should expect when you have annuals or perennials or shrubs. So we're here beside some salvia. Salvia, this particular kind of salvia is a perennial. Um, Perennials basically what they do is they come back every year and they will bloom for a period of time. It may be a short period, it may be up to maybe a month or two, but they won't bloom all summer. I know we have so many people coming in asking for a perennial because they don't want to plant it every year that blooms all summer long. That's a daily question. Well, there isn't any. So on perennials, what you need to do is plant several different ones so you have some bloom coming all the time. So these are salvia. They're great, but they will bloom for a couple months maybe, and then we'll have to move on to something else. So over here, let's walk over here. These are petunias, in case you didn't know. They're an annual. So annuals, they grow from seed. They will die off in the winter. You can't expect these to make it through the winter and come back. So, but the thing about annuals though is they bloom all summer long. So if you're wanting color, if you're wanting hanging baskets, pots, just color on your porch, you want to use annuals for that. Really, they're easier to take care of. You have to plant them every year, but there's really a lot less knowledge you have to have. If you water and fertilize, annuals are going to look great for you. And then the third thing is shrubs. So we typically would call a shrub, it's a woody plant, okay? And they can range anywhere from a couple feet up to 10 feet tall. So you really got to know what size of plant you're wanting and read the tag, see how big the plants get. The thing about shrubs is, this is a long-term investment. They're going to last many years. It's very important though to pick out the one that is going to grow into the size of the space you have. So you don't want to keep a shrub that you really like. You think, oh, it looks beautiful, I love the flowers. You have a 3-foot space and it's going to get 10 foot tall. You don't want to pick those out. The other thing about shrubs is, like, this is a particular one is a lilac, and they do flower. The flowers only last for a couple weeks. So while you're choosing your shrubs, I like to think about other things besides just the flower. You want to think about the leaf, just how the plant grows, and make sure it's going to look nice all year long. The shrubs will not flower as long as perennials. Perennials won't flower as long as annuals. But they all have their purpose in the landscape, and they're all very important, and they all add to the joy of gardening. So that's what we want to talk about in our first video, just so you can understand what to expect out of perennials, what to expect out of annuals, and what to expect out of shrubs. And it will make everything, when you decide what you want to plant where, it'll make your decision making a lot easier. And we will see you next time in our short little videos on new gardening. Hey, it's Keith at Scheider Farms, and we're here for our second installment of new gardening information. So today I want to talk about light. Seems like it's a confusing thing to a lot of people, but I hear a lot of times somebody will come in and say, oh yeah, we get full sun, and then it goes over the house by noon. So I want you to understand that full sun means your area gets sun for at least 6 to 8 hours a day. And that would be considered full sun, not just getting direct sun for a period of the day. So shade would obviously be getting very little sun, maybe up to 4 hours of sun. So that's the difference between sun and shade. Then we have part sun, which is like 4 to 6 hours of sun. And it does make a difference whether that 4 to 6 hours is in the morning or afternoon sometimes. So just to tell you how to decide what you're going to plant, pay attention to what your area is getting where you want to plant. Do that for a few days and make sure you know exactly how much and when it gets sun. So then when you come in here, you can let us know, and we'll be glad to help you find some plants. Or as you're looking around, the best thing you can do is start looking at tags. The plant tags always tell you if it goes in full sun or part sun or shade. So go by that. And you don't want to take a shade plant and put it in the sun. It won't do well. And you don't want to take a sun plant and put it in the shade because it won't do well. But match your plant up to where it goes, what it likes, and you'll be on your way to being successful. So we will see you next time.
Hi, it's Candy from Scheider Farms, and in our series, we wanted to talk about planting annuals. And an annual is something that does not come back every year, which would be a perennial. This is an annual, but it will give you color all summer long. So they just bloom all summer long. So first things first, you want to have a container that has drainage, so it has holes in the bottom, and we have that. This is going to be an all out in the sun container. We also use good quality potting soil. We use Costa Maine potting soil here. And then I'm going to plant this annual, which is a Supertunia Royal Velvet. And we pull the tags out first. We gently hold the plant, tip it over without really touching much, and we pull the bottom off. There's no need to tease these roots because they're fresh, it's new. There's no need to tease it at all. So I kind of present it on which side I want to plant it. There's kind of sometimes a good and a bad side. And in the front of the container, I have room for another plant. So I make a little hole to put the root ball in. So I'm moving the soil out of the way. And then I very gently drop the plant into the pot, making sure gently that the root ball is actually sitting just below the lip of the pot. So then I'm going to go back around the container and fill in all the little pockets, but you want to make sure your plants are always planted just below the lip of the container. So that's how we plant an annual in a container.
Hey, it's Keith at Scheider Farms, and today I am out here at my house. This is our backyard, and we're going to be planting some annuals in the ground. I know we've talked about planting in containers, so today we're going to talk about planting in the ground. It's a little bit different. I know many of you have some really poor soil, really hard soil, so we're going to talk about that as we go. So this area here, I got some shrubs back here that are flowering now. They're not going to be flowering much longer. I have catmint right here that looks gorgeous right now. The hummingbirds have been so happy with me for it. We've got some sedum here. But after the catmint's done and after the shrubs are done blooming, I'm just going to have green. So today, we're going to be planting some annual salvia. The thing I like about the annual salvia is it attracts hummingbirds and pollinators. It's like one of the best plants you could ever plant for hummingbirds. I'm going to be planting a couple different ones. So back here, I think we'll do the red one. This is Roman red salvia. And so the first thing I want to do, this is a pretty sunny location. Salvia need a lot of sun. I'm going to lay them out how I want them laid out, so I know my spacing. So I'm gonna do these 5 salvia in here. You may think, well, you just come in, dig a hole, pop them in there, and you're done. But there's a little bit more to it to that if you want them to really look nice. So we'll start back here. First thing is have the right equipment. I'm going to use this trowel because I'm doing a fairly small plant and this ground's not too hard. A lot of you may want to just use a regular pointed shovel. If I was planting a perennial or something in a gallon pot, I would use this one for sure. You can get it down in the ground and it makes digging a lot easier. So as we already talked about, and as you already know, our soils have a lot of clay in them and are pretty hard. So I always, every time I plant anything, even in good soil like I have here, you're going to want to dig up quite a bit bigger area than what your plant is actually going to take. We've got Costa Maine compost here, so I'm going to take some of that and I'm going to throw it on there, and I'm going to mix it up with my shovel a little bit. I know a lot of people over the years, they say, my soil's so bad, I'm just going to replace it. What do you suggest I replace my soil with? I just want to dig it out and get rid of it so bad. We we never recommend just digging your soil up and replacing it with something. I would always recommend digging up your soil and adding some compost to it. I know it's still going to seem pretty rough, but think over the long term, it's going to improve your soil, and you can take clay soil and make a nice garden bed out of it. So now we got this all loosened up around here. I'm going to dig my hole. We're going to use some biotone starter. It's got mycorrhizae, which is a natural fungus that works with the roots. It grows on the roots to make them more efficient at taking up nutrients and water. So we'll just mix that in with the dirt a little bit. You want it in contact with the roots because that's where the mycorrhizae will colonize, is on the roots. You don't need to tear up the roots. They're not bad. They're going to grow out. A lot of times you could just damage the roots and cause a place for infection if you start tearing them up. So we're going to backfill with the soil. I want to press it down. Put a little bit of weight into it. You want to get the air pockets out. And then we're going to come back and we're going to water around here thoroughly. And I just want to say a quick thing about newly planted things. You're going to want to water it more frequently because, as you saw, all of the roots are right here. There's no roots growing out in the soil yet, so all the water it's taking in is right here for the first week or so. And then as the roots begin to grow out, you can cut back on the watering and maybe water a little bit deeper when you water. So that's the basics on planting in the soil, in the ground. Don't replace it. But add to it, build your soil up. And one last thing is, don't try to plant in the mud, in the clay soil, because it'll make marbles, basically balls, and will be very difficult to grow things in. So wait till it crumbles, just be a little patient, and you will be very successful at planting in the soil and will enjoy your garden to its maximum amount. So we'll see you next time. Hey, it's Keith at Shiner Farms, and today I want to talk about probably the single most important thing you can do to take care of your flowers this summer, and that is watering. It's where a lot of mistakes are made, but it's not like some complicated thing. You just got to do it, and you got to learn what your plants want first of all. So a hanging basket that has calibrachoa petunias that get really big and they're out in the sun and out in the wind are going to dry out much faster than a container of begonias or something that's in the shade and doesn't get a lot of sun. So first you got to learn how much water your plants need, and the best way to do that is just by getting in there, lifting up the hanging baskets, see how heavy they are. They should be really heavy. What you need to do is water it good until it's saturated and see how heavy that thing should be when you're done, and then when it gets dry, see how light it is when it needs watered. So make sure it's heavy when you're done. On containers, a lot of them you can't really lift up, but you can stick your finger down in there, you can kind of look, and then if the top of the soil is getting dry, if you poke down a couple inches and it's kind of dry, you need to water them good and water them thoroughly. One of the big mistakes is people just kind of spray things off and think it's watered. Well, it needs to be watered all the way down. And along with that, if it rains, a lot of people think, well, I don't need to water that day because it rained. Typically rain, unless it rains all day long and we get a couple inches, it's not enough to really water your container. So even if it rains, go ahead and water like you would as if it didn't rain. Because trust me, that's probably when a lot of the things get dry, is when it rains and we think we don't need to water. So learn your plants, learn what the shade ones need, learn what your hanging baskets need, and pretty soon you won't have to lift them up every time. You'll just know how often they need water. But make sure you water regular. It will help on preventing diseases. It will help keeping them healthy to prevent insect problems. Healthy plants are much more resistant to all those issues later in the summer. So keep them watered. And if they do dry out, one more thing, if they do dry out and you water your hanging baskets and the water just runs right through it, go back about 10 minutes later, water them again. 10 minutes later, water them again. Keep watering until the basket's really heavy again, and it should come back as long as it hadn't dried out too bad. So keep them watered, keep them happy. You'll be happy, and we'll see you next time. Hello, it's Keith at Shiner Farms, and today in our videos we want to talk about deadheading and just keeping your plants clean. So one of the common things people ask or maybe don't even think about is deadheading and just keeping your plants cleaned up and looking good. So one of the most common plants we sell are geraniums, and geraniums certainly need deadheaded to keep looking good. What happens if you don't deadhead is the nutrients, all the nutrients in the plant will go into the flower and then into making seed, where it could be going into making more flowers. So we've got a spent bloom here. It's pretty much done. It's a few scraggler petals still hanging on there. But on the geraniums, I like to just use my fingers, and I'll go down at the base of the flower stem and just bend it backwards, and it snaps right off. You don't want to just, if you just break them off like that, then you have a stem sticking up, which isn't going to hurt anything, but it doesn't look as good as breaking it off down low. So that's how you deadhead a geranium. There's certain plants that need it deadheaded, certain plants that don't. This is a Gerber daisy. Gerber daisies will look way better if you deadhead. And what you want to do, just like on the geranium, if this flower was done, you would follow the stem all the way down and cut it off right down here at the base, and it'll keep, that will stimulate new flower growth. So by keeping it deadheaded, you will increase flower production. There's a lot of things that don't need deadheaded, so there's no use in trying to. Petunias in front of me, there's so many flowers on there. You would spend all week deadheading. They do not need deadhead. They'll keep blooming great all season long as you keep them fertilized. There's no need to deadhead. Calibrachoa, impatiens, none of those things need deadheaded. Going back to some perennials, this is Gaillardia. It's another one that it has a lot of flowers. Probably people may not deadhead as much, but if you do, this bloom's about spent, so I'm going to cut it off. You want to follow it down to where it branches and just snip it off. If you do it right above where there's a branch, that will cause that one to branch and a new flower will come. Salvia, again, if this bloom was spent, I would just go down to where it forks and cut that back, and it will encourage some more growth there. So basically, deadheading just encourages more flowers. It keeps the plant looking neater, and it will lengthen the bloom time for it. So get out there. I know it seems like little work, but it's actually fun when you get out there and start doing it, and it will make everything look a lot better and improve your gardening success.